Hello, this is Mr. Stewart from the Math 17, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Chapter 4.1 quiz, which is all about assessing your understanding of graphing, solution sets of inequalities. So I'm just going to hit begin, and we're going to talk about some things. Okay, so the thing you need to remember about inequalities is that they contain solution sets, not just a single solution. So Z is representing a group of numbers that would be less than 10.5. And so if you're looking at this, and maybe I'll just make one up, I'll just do A is less than, and maybe I'll just say 2.5. So what you need to think about is on this number line, here's 0, here's 1, here's 2, okay? So, and then just a little bit above that, here's 3. So 2.5 is going to land right about here, okay? And there's a few things you need to remember about this. First of all, A is representing the solution set. And the solution set is just a fancy way of saying all of the numbers that A could be in order for this to be true, in order for this to be less than 2.5. So this is saying A is less than. We read it left to right, less than. So we read it A is less than 2.5. And so here's 2.5 right here. And we need to understand that this inequality is not showing is equal to. So it looks different. So less than or equal to looks different than just less than. Less than is strictly less than. So we need to say, okay, what numbers here could A be? Well, A could be 2, right? A could be 2. A could not be 3. Like, that wouldn't be a solution. A is not less than 2.5. So that would not be a solution. 1 could be a solution. 0 could be a solution. But the thing is, I think you're kind of realizing, gosh, all of these things in between here could also be solutions. And all of these things in between here, in fact, anything this way could also be a solution. So we're looking at this arrow and we're thinking, okay, all of these things. But what about all of this stuff right in here, all of that little stuff? Well, we know right at 2.5, that cannot be a solution, right? 2.5 is not less than 2.5. So we can't include the number 2.5 as part of the solution set of the inequality A is less than 2.5. But anything even just slightly smaller than 2.5 is also a solution, like 2.25. 2 and, anything smaller than 2.5. So we use open circles to show that anything that's less than or greater than. So this is showing something that is starting at this point but not equal to this point. And then if we're going to show a graph, we're going to do a closed circle for anything that's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So if we have one of these, this is showing we're going to start at this point, but this is also included as one of the solutions to the solution set. So your task is to look at these graphs and pick the one that represents this scenario, where Z is all of the solutions that is less than 10.5. Okay. Here is another question, and another good one. It's just, again, matching just the graph to this inequality. So G, and I'll use B. I'll make up my own. So B is anything that's greater than or equal to a -5. And again, if you're hitting this quiz and you have no clue, my advice would be to go back and watch the 4.1 discussion, because that covers everything in very clear detail. So, and I'll make something else up so it doesn't look the exact same. So if B was greater than or equal to a -8, I'll say -8. So if I'm looking at a number line here, and here's 0 right here, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wow, it's just going all the way out there. So this is a -8 right here. You got to think, B is is any number that would make this inequality true. And we want to put this in terms of a graph. So we want to think, okay, what number could be equal to and still make this inequality true? What numbers are larger than -8? Well, anything on this side of the number line is larger than -8. So, for example, -7 is greater than -8, -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, even 0 is larger than -8. Remember, this is a negative value, so I'd rather owe somebody $1 than $8. I would rather owe somebody $1. I would rather have $0 than owing somebody $8. That would be better. And of course, anything above this as well. That, all of these are solutions to this inequality. So we would call them members of the solution set. We draw the arrow indicating that the solution set will continue going that way. Well, what about all of the numbers in between -8 and -7? These are all solutions as well. But what about -8? Is -8 greater than or equal to -8? Remember, this is showing greater than, but this is also saying is equal to as well. So anything that is greater than or equal to a -8 is included. So is -8 equal to -8? And we would say yes. This is our starting point. So I'm going to do a big closed circle. Remember, open circle for just greater than or less than, but a closed circle for greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. So a big closed circle showing I'm starting at -8, and that is part of the solution set, and anything above -8 is also part of that solution set. Okay, so in this question, this is going to seem very long and lengthy, but I want you to think about it, and your whole goal is it says to evaluate the number and tell whether or not the value belongs to the solution set of the inequality. So basically what you're doing is you're going to type yes if the number is a solution to this inequality right here. You're going to type no if the number is not a solution to that inequality up here. And so what you're going to be doing is considering each one of these in the inequality. And now I'm going to make another one up just to kind of just do something different. So I'll do 3p is greater than, and I'll do something easy, 12. I'll do 12, okay? And so if I'm looking at this, I'll just do a few of them, okay? If I'm looking at this, I'm considering whether or not 0, right, whether or not 0 is a solution to this inequality. So if I were to type 0 into 3 times p, so I'm substituting 0 in for that, I would get 3 times 0 is greater than 12. And the question is this true? Well, 3 times 0 is 0. Is 0 greater than 12? And the answer would be, in my case, I would say, for 0, no. No, 0 is not a solution. Now in yours, you're going to have to evaluate it on your own. Then you take the same thing. You do, okay, what about a -1? Is this a solution? For mine, I would substitute it. And I would say, okay, what's 3 times -1? And I would see if this is greater than 12. And this is going to give me a -3, and it's clear to see that a -1 is also a no. A -1 is not a solution to this inequality. So that is not part of the solution set. So I would say no. And then you would do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. So for this answer, you type it in blank 1. Then blank 2, on and on and on. That's how it's going to go. So if it's answer number 1, you just type in yes or no, just how you see it here. Don't do anything crazy like yep or yesery or anything like that, because the computer won't recognize that. You must either type yes or no. Okay, the last question reads, write an inequality for the graph. And so this time, this time you're actually going to have to use the symbols and the variable, and so you're going to have to write something like this. So here's a graph, and notice it's intervals, right? Starting at 0, and then you're going to 0.5, and then 1. There's 2 right here. So notice where it's starting. Notice that it's an open circle, not a closed circle, and hopefully that'll help you understand some things here. If I were to give you a different graph, and I'll just maybe make another one up here. This is 0, and let me say this is at, I don't know, 2, so this is 1 right here. If I had a graph that looked like this, open circle, and then an arrow pointing this way, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this arrow is representing a value of x, and it's asking us to use x for that variable, so you want to use that. So all of the arrow is covering all of the solutions to an inequality, and so I'm trying to figure out what that inequality would look like. So here is x, but here is also something that could be x, and here is also something that could be x. So how would I write this as an inequality? Well, I'm looking at my starting point, and I know anything smaller than 2, definitely not solutions. Anything larger than 2, definitely solutions. But anything that is 2, which is just 2, is definitely not a solution. So open circle, if you're kind of thinking about it, that means we're not going to do the greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. It's just going to be strictly greater than or less than. So I'm going to start with 2. 2. And actually, you know what, and I actually want to start with the variable. Variables are easy to start with. So x, all of these solutions, x, is something that is, let's see, is it bigger than 2 or is it less than 2? How would I write that? Well, it's larger than 2, so that means that x itself is going to be bigger than the number I'm starting with, but it's not going to be equal to 2. So x is larger than 2, but not equal to 2. This is the inequality I would type right here in this area. Okay, so you'll want to be careful with how you type it. You want to use the variable x, because the computer won't recognize another variable. We've programmed it to just recognize x as the variable. You'll also want to use the symbols, and you'll want to use the number that you started with. And so there's hopefully you kind of understand how you're supposed to type that in, and just kind of think about it that way. And hopefully this is helpful for you, and there you go.